Last week I did a video on some depreciated Audis that are great value for money. Today I'm going to do the same video again, but instead with BMWs. All because you guys asked for it. 5 cars, less than 35k, quite expensive, but they mostly start at around 20k, that are really decent BMWs for the money. Hit like if you want to see more videos like this, subscribe as well if you're new, and let me know in the comments down below what brand would you like me to do next. Without further ado, let's get straight into it. Let's kick this video off with a car that doesn't even hold the BMW badge on it, but instead one that holds the hallowed Alpina badge instead. Alpina are obviously owned by BMW, but they do operate mostly separately, which shows given their concept around what makes a BMW special and fun to drive being effectively completely different to what BMW do with M Sport. They do like to add a lot of power to BMWs still though, and the B5's 4.4 litre supercharged V8 puts out 493 brake horsepower to prove exactly that, taking it to 60 in 4.5 seconds, so not crazy fast, but definitely not slow either. What's so good about the way Alpina modify BMWs is that they start with trying to make a road car the best a road car can be. They don't take BMWs to tracks like the Nürburgring and start pushing them around to see just how to fine tune a car to handle well on track, as though people like me do like that kind of stuff. For the vast majority of road users, a car that handles like a track car isn't great for day-to-day use. Instead, they focus specifically on how well the car drives on roads of all types, how comfortable they are over cobbled streets, how well they cruise on motorways, and how they handle sweeping curves of mountain roads, as well as how agile they are on tight back roads. Plus, the power delivery on the B5 is made much better and more linear by the addition of the supercharger, eliminating potential turbo lag, though also being the main point of failure on these cars. And then outside of that, they simply make a few standard modifications to the car's exterior, like the telltale Alpina alloys, the exhaust and the bumpers, give it some more premium interior features like the Alpina leather sport seats and upholstery, and send it on its way. It's that formula that makes the B5 such a nice car, and why prices remain pretty high for the oldest car on the list, given if you were to get an equivalent 5 Series as these were built on the E60 545i, you would be spending a small fraction of what this car costs, as these start at around £30,000, and at our 35k limit you'll be getting a 2010 model with 50k on the clock. I recently had the chance to drive and review the BMW i8, and it really surprised me, as it was nothing like I expected, though I'm not really sure what I expected. It almost looks too exotic for its main purpose, which is basically to be a comfortable Grand Tourer with an interesting powertrain, and even then I personally think it really shines as a cheap to run, good looking city car. That's because it comes with a 1.5 litre turbocharged inline-3 engine combined with electric power to produce 356 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 4.3 seconds. Crazy to think that a car that looks like this would come with an engine that small. I actually think the i8 is a future classic though, because not only did it dominate its class as a hybrid sports car, it was cancelled while it was still pretty popular, meaning there's now a finite amount of highly popular, successful, exotic looking BMWs that was one of the first of its kind. It's the perfect recipe for future intrigue. But it doesn't actually feel much like a BMW to drive, partially because of its more M1 style looks, but mostly because it's actually quite sensible. When I drove the M4 a couple of years ago, it wanted to go fast, wasn't particularly enjoyable at slow speeds, and I always wanted to be a hooligan in it, whereas the i8 made me feel like I wanted to cruise along at slow speeds and chill, which is funny considering it does also have the more aggressive exterior looks. It also feels different on the interior, which can be hard to get in and out of if you're a bit taller, where I wouldn't say it's the most premium materials of all time, but it certainly is nice aesthetically in there. They'll run you around £31,000 at the bottom end, and 35k gets you a 2015 model with around 30,000 miles on the clock. Generally they've not been terrible on reliability either, though of course batteries are a potential longer term concern. Highly recommend you check out my recent review and drive of this car if you want to hear more. Taking third on this list is potentially one of the most performant and modern BMWs you can actually buy within our price range, although its popularity does put off people like me who, for some reason, have an inherent dislike of things that are liked by too many people. It's the BMW M2 Competition, and it's so well loved for good reason. It's genuinely one of the coolest offerings you can get for a starting price of around £26,000 nowadays, while £35,000 gets you into a 2018 model with around 30,000 miles on the clock. For that kind of money you'll be getting yourself a 3 litre twin turbocharged inline-6 engine producing 404 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 4.3 seconds. And what I find most interesting therefore about this car is that its main competition from both Audi and Mercedes doesn't come in the form of a hot coupe. Instead it would be the A45S AMG and the RS3, both of which are hot hatches, or at a push, hot saloons in their CLA and RS3 saloon specs, as they offer similar levels of power and actually slightly more performance. performance. It's certainly not the new M135i though, which is way less powerful and slower to 60 as well. But anyway, this M2 actually followed on from the previous generation 1M, which was a bit of a unicorn car given it was a limited production, first of its kind of car for BMW. This on the other hand is mass produced and an evolution, but objectively it's faster and more performant than the 1M, and you buy them for different reasons. In comp spec you got the addition of an extra turbo, giving it effectively the same powertrain as the M4, just slightly detuned, plus you also got some of the cooling system from the M4, as well as a carbon fiber reinforced plastic strut bar in the engine bay, slightly larger grills, and the option for bigger performance brakes too. So the main party piece is the additional performance, but also it's not actually much more expensive than the non-comp, so it's probably worth the extra pennies. They did have Vanos, oil filter housing gasket, water pump and other issues though, often due to lack of proper care. So I hope you guys are enjoying this video. If you have been, do hit the like button and subscribe as well if you're new, and let me know in the comments down below, what is your favourite ever BMW? I'm not sure what mine is, but I'm a big fan of the 1M. Just missing out on the top spot, we had the F06 BMW M6 Gran Coupe, the version of the M6 that came with a couple of extra doors over the coupe and convertible. This generation took its powertrain from the F10 M5, which is effectively its stablemate in the BMW brand. What's interesting about the Gran Coupe though is that it's categorized as a 4-door saloon, same as the M5, so if anything, I liken it to a sleeper looking, more Grand Touring focused M5 all in. That powertrain is a 4.4 litre twin turbocharged V8, producing a massive 552 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 4.1 seconds, which is not bad when you consider that it's a proper BMW in that it's rear wheel drive, rather than getting BMW's X-Drive all-wheel drive system, which you might have expected on a Grand Tourer. For me, the class this car competes in makes it great value for money, as the interior is enough of a nice place to be and the size is big enough that it's effectively a poor man's entry point into M8 ownership. Yes, it's not quite as aggressive all in, but it's still an M car, still pretty modern, and still serves the same purpose, to eat up miles on a Grand Tour and look good doing it. What's interesting too is that despite its size, of the three cars, the Gran Coupe is actually the middle one when it comes to weight. The convertible weighs more than 100 kilograms more, while the coupe is exactly 100 kilograms lighter. So yes, if you want performance then go for the coupe, but to be honest, they're all very heavy cars, and weirdly I personally think the Gran Coupe is the best, most different looking of the bunch. To buy one you need to spend around 21k at the bottom end, and 35k gets you a 2017 model with 30k on the clock. They're known for battery drain, oil consumption, coolant leaks and misfires, but early models had the real potential problems with rod bearings. Taking the top spot on this list we have the BMW M4 Competition, which takes first because of its performance of course, but actually I think all in, it's probably the best value for money BMW on the list too. Having driven the non-comp in anger, the slight modifications to the comp make it handle a touch better, give it a little bit more power, make some minor aesthetic changes, and most importantly, doesn't really affect the second-hand price too much when you hit the kind of 25k region. In part that's because the changes don't necessarily impact day-to-day ownership of the M4, especially because you can also go more aggressive than the comp with the CS and GTS both sitting above it in the M4 lineup. That being said, these start at around £22,000, and at our 35k limit you'll be getting a 2018 one with around 25,000 miles on the clock. The M4 is a great size for day-to-day use, has great performance, looks very nice and beefy, and I particularly like it in convertible spec with the hardtop roof to give it a bit more practical use all year round. Then when you add on the performance, it's a hard car to beat within this price range, thanks to its 3-litre twin turbocharged inline 6 making 443 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 3.9 seconds. The only thing that maybe lets it down is just how aggressively it wants to go fast at all times. This really isn't a car that sits comfortably at 30 miles per hour in my experience. Yes, it'll do it, but it'll make you feel like it wants to be going a lot faster at all times. I mentioned the changes, but the main benefit of going for the comp over the non-comp is the new suspension setup for greater handling, which is paired with a modified E-diff and dynamic stability control. Where the non-comp can be a bit unruly when cornering at high speeds, these modifications stiffen up the comp and make the handling a bit more predictable. Generally they've been quite good on reliability, but the main problems I've seen on forums have been DCT gearbox related. And so there you have it, 5 great BMWs for the money. Do hit like if you enjoyed. If you haven't seen the same video but for Audi instead, click the on-screen link. Huge thanks to the patrons and you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one.